Hello, and welcome to MyCounselor.Online. I'm your host, Brittany East, and joining me today as our featured counselor, September Trent. September is looking at a new eating disorder that many people have not had yet. Before we dive into that interesting topic, September, can you take a minute to introduce yourself for those viewers who may not know you yet?
Definitely. My name is September Trent, and I've been with MCO for 10 years. I am in the Springfield office, and I specialize in seeing teenagers, adults, specifically with self-harm, eating disorders, anxiety, depression, and I do a little bit of affair recovery and female sexual dysfunction.
That's amazing. That's a wide gambit, but I'm grateful. It sounds like the topic that we're talking today is definitely like in your wheelhouse, your specialty, and something you're passionate about. So I'm really eager to dive in to like what you have to share with us. So your article is titled Orthorexia Nervosa, the new eating disorder.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write this article?
Yeah, the work that I've done more recently, I've encountered clients that have this diagnosis.
Okay.
And the first thing that I want to say is it's not a diagnosis in our manual, the DSM-5. It is something that's being researched. It's been around for 20 years. So I've had clients that have had this, and it just inspired me to write this article because I think there's a lot of people who feel like something's going on with their eating and they have anxiety, but they don't fit in anorexia or bulimia or binge eating disorder. And so they're like, what's going on? And so this diagnosis label can be very helpful, very informative for them.
I kind of heard maybe like snippets of like when I read your article, I was like, oh, that kind of sounds familiar, but I didn't know there was an actual name for it or really diving into it. So what audience is this article? Like, who did you write this for?
Yeah, I wrote this kind of for two audiences. First, just like the people that they're struggling with this and they're struggling with eating really clean, really pure, and they have anxiety about it, but they didn't really have a label for it. They knew that it was kind of getting extreme, but they were not really sure like what this was. They knew maybe they needed help, but just wasn't sure how to get that help. And then maybe for loved ones or friends of these individuals where they're seeing these behaviors and they're like, yes, so I can see how it's good because you're eating clean and pure. You're trying to be healthy for yourself, but it's going to an extreme so that they have kind of an idea of, hey, this is getting out of hand, and maybe can have a conversation or just have an idea that this isn't a healthy relationship with food.
No, that totally makes sense. I know you've kind of touched on it a little bit. Do you mind taking like a deeper dive then into what actually is orthorexia nervosa?
Yes.
Like what falls under that umbrella then?
Definitely. Yeah, it's characterized by an unhealthy focus on dietary purity, which leads to disordered eating. So dietary purity, we would consider that to be just wanting to eat foods that maybe are vegetables, fruits that don't have any artificial flavorings. Maybe that's organic, things that are very don't have any additives to it. And so they will focus on those types of things, and it will get to a point where they cut entire food groups out, maybe like carbs or things like that, and just stick to this. But then there's this anxiety piece of like, I can't deviate from that. If I eat anything that's off of this dietary plan, there's a lot of anxiety. They avoid situations where the foods that they feel comfortable with, if they're not there, then they will avoid those situations.
So what do you think maybe are like the red flags that someone is kind of crossed the line to orthorexia nervosa versus like, I'm just trying to eat healthier?
Exactly. Yeah. So first, it's the inability to eat food groups that are deemed healthy or pure. They only want to eat those if they won't deviate from that. And if they try to deviate, or if there's no other options, there's an extreme anxiety where they can't stop thinking about it, or they will avoid situations that they feel like the food is being prepared in a different way than they're used to. Also, they'll spend like hours a day reading labels, prepping food that fit their dietary plan. Also, the distress that they feel, it's more than just like for like you and me, if we would overeat and we're like, oh, that stinks, I'm going to do better tomorrow. It's for them. There's a lot of anxiety. They maybe have negative thoughts about themselves. The one thing I will say is that with orthorexia nervosa, we don't always see like body image issues. We see body image issues in like anorexia and bulimia, but with orthorexia nervosa, those may not be there. It's more about the purity and the healthiness of the foods and the things that they're putting in their body.
That is a really interesting distinction. And it sounds like kind of the major red flag is just this intense anxiety that almost like you can't continue forward with your life as easily. Because
Exactly.
it feels so all consuming.
Yeah.
Why do you think society has become, because I mean, I've definitely heard this phrase like clean eating, dirty does, like, all these things. Like, why do you think society has kind of made the shift into like clean eating?
Yeah, I think it started out as we're wanting to take care of our bodies, which is a good motivation. We're wanting to put, organic things into our bodies or things without additives. So it started out as really good. And also like people wanting to kind of step away from maybe certain medications or certain types of things they're putting into their body and be more like healthy and natural.
Right.
And while both of those things are good things, it's gone to an extreme where we have access to, internet, social media, blogs, and this obsessiveness with it, or even like there's a negative viewpoint of like, if you don't do these things, there's maybe something wrong with you, or you're not taking really good care of your body. And so that's kind of how we've seen some of this transition into only eating healthy foods, only eating clean foods.
No, that totally makes sense. I feel like this has come, I know your article I've definitely focused on like adults struggling with orthorexia nervosa, but I also feel like I've heard it come up even with like kids and how we're talking about foods with them and them maybe like not processing, like, because kids life is black and white. So if it's not clean, it must be dirty. If like type thing. Do you feel like that could be like something to just kind of be aware of with like how we're portraying foods, more like maybe this is coming out more often because kids are kind of being raised in an environment where there is like these distinctions that maybe weren't there before?
Yeah, I definitely, I have had clients that are in like the younger age, well, teenagers that have orthorexia nervosa because of things that they've, maybe they wanted to do better at sports and they wanted to put healthier foods in their body, but also they're hearing language from their parents of like, this is a good food, this is a bad food, this is a healthy, non-healthy, clean, dirty. And so there is this like this dichotomy of like, I should only eat these, and if I do these, eat these bad foods, then I'm also bad. And it's like, no, that's not how we want to speak about food with our kids. We really have to be conscious of ourselves, of what we're saying about what we're eating, how we feel about ourselves, what's good and bad, and just our own relationship with food is going to impact our kids' relationship with food.
No, that totally makes sense. I appreciate you like kind of making that distinction and like just realizing that, even if it for, I think as parents, well, it's just how I view it, that like our kids are going to take that on, and just because I feel like it sounds like from your article, there has been such an increased uptick in this. So like kind of maybe thinking more, so like, where is this coming from? Like, what are we saying and doing? No, I know this because like I know you made a little distinction earlier, like it doesn't necessarily have to do with body image, but can, like, if someone is like, okay, I'm struggling with food issues, I'm going to go see a mental health professional. Is this easily confused with other mental health disorders or maybe like overlooked?
Yeah, definitely. It can be confused with anorexia because usually people that do have orthorexia nervosa, they may not be underweight, but they're very thin. Their body can look similar to those who have anorexia, but some differences are like anorexia includes like the refusal to maintain a healthy body weight, a distorted view of their body, and then also a fear of getting fat or gaining weight. With orthorexia nervosa, we don't see that fear of gaining weight or getting fat. We don't always see the distorted view of themselves. And with orthorexia nervosa, they want to be at a healthy weight. They want to be healthy. The other piece too is orthorexia is very accepted by society, like the behaviors that are in it, where anorexia is not. They will hide their behaviors more, where orthorexia nervosa, those people that have that, they will kind of glorify. They want people to know that they're being very healthy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. It is totally like, oh, well, they're eating healthy, they're eating
Yep.
clean, like, or even companies. It's so interesting, even seeing like packaging these days,
Yes.
like I have, which I mean, to be fair, I do buy because I like the ingredients.
Sure.
It's a company called Junkless, as
Yeah.
if like the other food is junk. It's
Yep.
interesting. My son, who's 6, he reads now. So he's like, oh, those
Yeah.
are the Junkless bars. And it's hard because I'm like, dang it, like I really like the
Yeah.
food it is, but I kind of don't like the idea that like I'm worried he would go and tell someone else, like, well, you're
Yeah.
eating junk. I'm eating junk. Like,
Yeah. Yes. Yes,
um,
that's so true. Just that the packaging and the labels that have gotten onto different foods and just, yeah, how it impacts our kids and how we have conversations with them about food.
yeah. And then as far as like that obsessiveness, does like I know OCD is obviously like an
Yep.
obsessive kind of disorder too. Are there like any precursors? Like if someone has certain other mental health issues they're struggling with, they might kind of tend towards orthorexia nervosa?
Yeah, so if they have like another eating disorder, sometime if they have had maybe anorexia or bulimia, sometimes they can kind of go into the orthorexia nervosa.
Okay.
Also, if they do have an anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, we see those tendencies in orthorexia nervosa, just with like the checking of the labels, the
Okay.
extreme anxiety. I would say with like obsessive compulsive disorder, those individuals have a lot of insight into their disorder of like, I don't want to act this way. It's overtaking my life.
Okay.
Where with orthorexia nervosa, they don't always have that insight. They think it's okay what they're doing. It's not disrupting their life. They don't always think it's actually helping me when it's not.
I know at the beginning of this, you said that you wrote your article kind of for people who may actually be struggling with this and not realize it, and for people who are like the friends of these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for like not necessarily the person who's struggling with this, but maybe the
Mhm.
friend who recognizes this in their friend?
Yeah, yeah. I would say being careful how you approach it, because you don't want to be judgmental, you don't want to be harsh with them. You just want to share your concerns of, I really care about you, but I'm noticing you're having a lot of anxiety when we're like going out to eat or when we're at a function and you don't always have access to certain things you want to. And I'm just wondering, how difficult that is for you, and if it would be helpful to just talk with someone about it. I might actually go at it more as the anxiety route, because with the food they might get more defensive and think that you're
Yeah.
like watching them eat, but really showing your concern for that person and you really care about them and you're seeing how this impacts them and you just want them to have a life where they're not having to have all of this anxiety impact them.
Yeah, just really almost like you're just caring about their life, not necessarily about the
Yes,
food or their
right,
decisions. But it's like you
right.
want them to live their life to the full, and maybe
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
that makes sense. And then, do you have any final piece of advice for someone's watching this? Or like, oh, actually, I think I do have an eating disorder.
Yeah, yeah. The first thing I would say is the NEDA National Eating Disorder Association, on their website, they have like an assessment tool that you
Oh
can
wow.
go and take, and it'll tell you if you should go to therapy right away. And their website is nationaleatingdisorders.org. You can go there and take that assessment. But I would also say, like, if you like after hearing this video, watching it, and you just feel like I may need to go and see someone, go schedule an appointment, because even if you don't meet the diagnosis for certain eating disorders, even if we catch things early like the obsessiveness or the bad behaviors or unhealthy behaviors with food, that's going to be so much better, like helping you with that now than when it gets to an eating disorder. And also, I would just say too, just about the stigma. There's so much stigma still with eating disorders and therapy. And I would just encourage you that go and get help. There's so many people that struggle in the same way that you do that you don't even know about. And you're not alone in this journey. You'll find that out when you go to therapy, but also one part of eating disorder recovery that can be really helpful is like group support and knowing that there's other people there that know what you're going through. And so don't be afraid to get help. You're not alone. We'll meet you right where you're at.
Yeah, that's really helpful. September, thank you so much for coming on our show today and just sharing like great insight into where the line is, and even just like, it sounds like you really have to have a big heart for just helping people to live their lives fully, not be held back by maybe this intense anxiety around food. So thank you so much for all the work that you have done and continue to do with people who are struggling with this.
Yes.
And for anyone joining us today, thank you so much for watching. We so appreciate you taking the time out of your day to learn more about the different mental disorders and eating disorders and things that can happen in someone's life, and just your heart to want to help them as you're watching this. If you want to check out any of our other archived videos and interviews, you can find us on social media on Facebook and Instagram. If you search Love My Counselor, our pages will pop up. And for our biggest archive of videos, you can search on YouTube for MyCounselor.Online Christian Counseling, and you'll be able to see a large history of interviews that we've done. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another episode of My Counselor Online.